Chair recognizes the honourable member for South Beach.
Mr. Speaker, as I rise, I can only ask God to come in this place. Mr. Speaker, I would acknowledge the Almighty God, for I am admonished in all my ways to acknowledge Him, and He shall direct my path. Mr. Speaker, I'm always grateful to the good people of South Beach who give me the opportunity to be their voice to advance their concerns in this honorable place. Mr. Speaker, but before I begin, I would like to congratulate the newly appointed Senator Roll on her appointment to the upper chambers, Mr. Speaker. We, the PLP women parliamentarians, believe that any woman, no matter her creed, her color, or her political affiliation, who have excelled to high office to serve the Bahamian people, have our support as a woman. Mr. Speaker, we understand and appreciate a good in building up women and strengthening our women rather than highlighting and criticizing them. Mr. Speaker, before I begin, I also would like to publicly thank Mr. Philip Miller, as he is soon to go into his pre-retirement leave from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Mr. Speaker, I note with interest his unique and unusual style of leadership, calm demeanor, deliberate stance, professionalism, dedication and service to the growth and development of this country over the years. Mr. Speaker, I believe that Stephen Richards said, doing the tough things sets winners apart from losers. And this is exactly what this government had to do so that this country can win. Mr. Speaker, I always say that I would rather I'd rather do what is right for my people if it means my loss than the wrong thing and let my country go down. Mr. Speaker, when you do what is right, opportunities is no more obstacles. I find that the single greatest obstruction to success is negativity. That is why this PLP government do not mind the naysayers. The member for Centerville is doing a good job in fiscal planning and managing this economy, and the FNM just can't stand it. Yes, there is much more to be done. And the people of South Beach, who indeed appreciate the homes being repaired by the urban renewal they criticize, they are thankful for the placement of pedestrian crossings and ripple bumps in the school zone area on Marshall Road. Yeah. The management and students of CV Bethel appreciate the repaving of the school parking area, and we are always thankful to ASP Sonatis and the entire team of the Urban Renewal for South Beach and the Southern District, Mr. Speaker, for their involvement in the community. Not only involvement in cleanup, Mr. Speaker, but also in building and installing positive in our young people in after-school sessions. Mr. Speaker, I also would like to thank Mr. Rick Fox, a teen challenge, who volunteered his service and the service of the young men in Teen Challenge to assist with home repairs and other initiatives to keep South Beach community clean and safe. Mr. Speaker, I want the people in Faith Gardens to know that the work has begun with their park. One of the things I am trying to do, Mr. Speaker, is get the community involved in building and beautification of their park, not only to generate some income from persons who don't have a job, but it also gives a sense of community spirit and know that they are involved in a building process. Mr. Speaker, South Beach is a beautiful place with enormous potential for economic growth. Persons out there on days such as this, windy days, they are windsurfing. Tourists visit us, and increasingly families spend more time on the beaches. So, Mr. Speaker, I took a brilliant young architect and I asked him to have a look at South Beach. Mr. Speaker, and I asked him, what do you see? And what that young man described to me, Mr. Speaker, was simply amazing. So I told him, put it on a paper, put it in drawing, and give it to me. And during my lunch break, Mr. Speaker, I went to see for myself what he got. And Mr. Speaker, it was incredible to see what that young man put on paper. So I said to my leader, I will petition you to seek assistance in this awesome development for South Beach. Mr. Speaker, as you are aware, you may be aware, 2 dormitories has been erected to replace the 2 that was destroyed by fire at the detention center. And 3 weeks ago, repairs commenced on 4 other buildings, including the kitchen, 2 dorms, and the medical block. This initiative was undertaken to eradicate excessive crowding, to ensure that detainees are in a clean and safe environment, and to transform the detention center to meet national and international standards. Mr. Speaker, after the implementation of the new immigration policies, which commenced November 1st, 2014, the Immigration Department, with the aid of the Ministry of Social Services and the able minister, the member for Yamakwa, in an effort to keep families together, all mothers who were detainees with children and unaccompanied minors who are now accommodated in a safe house instead of the detention center and children home as was previously practiced. Mr. Speaker, my minister, the member for Fox Hill, has ably reported in this House the statistics for the Immigration Department, the detention center. So there is no need for me to duplicate his efforts. But I want to reiterate that the Department of Immigration Enforcement Unit, with assistance of the Royal Bahamas Police Force, intends to continue operation as it always did prior to November 1st in every island and district of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas, ensuring that those who does not have legal right to reside or work in the Bahamas, they will be apprehended and deported. Mr. Speaker, with over 80% of the Bahamian public approving of the government's immigration policy, which was implemented on the 1st of November, we in the Department of Immigration stand resolute in seeing this policy that is 41 years overdue through. And on a personal note, Mr. Speaker, I would like the record to reflect that with the majority of Bahamians, I stand behind the immigration policy of my government and my minister, the Member of Parliament for Fox Hill, 100%. Mr. Speaker, yes, there are the cynical pessimists in this country who, under the disguise of human rights activists, choose to be a part of the problem rather than a part of the solution, who spill hate and anger, bitterness, rather than offer effective, substantive solution. But we are not deterred, and we shall not be moved. Their most recent attack is only yesterday morning, when they are urging the Haitian community to resist immigration officers. Mr. Speaker, this man is deliberately trying to incite violence in this country and undermine our institution. And every Bahamian should speak out against it. Every Bahamian should speak out against it. Because the danger in what he is asking the Haitians to do, Mr. Speaker, can lead to anarchy. Mr. Speaker, we must be careful. Mr. Speaker, what I find so amazing is how selective and disingenuous those persons who purport to be human rights activists are in their representation. A few months ago, the member for Fox Hill announced that 11 Haitian souls were thrown overboard while being smuggled to this country and lost their lives, and not one word from the opposing human rights activists, not a prayer, not even a moment of silence, Mr. Speaker.
Was offered, eh?
But they rather relegate the very essence of what they claim to be promoting as they ostracize, denigrate, vilify, and disperse the reputation of our hard-working immigration officers. Mr. Speaker, the devil is a liar.
Yeah. Talk, Cleo.
Mr. Speaker, our officers do an excellent job
Yes.
in the service for this beautiful Bahama land. Yet this individual, who in my opinion is displaying sign of borderline radicalism, has accused the Immigration Department of institutional terrorism. Mr. Speaker, the government's policies as ethnic cleansing. Mr. Speaker, his action is frankly trying to incite riot and disorder in this country. So, Mr. Speaker, when you see people spilling such contempt and hatred, being a healthcare professional, we always look for the why. We try to find the causative agent or the causative event. Then I came across, Mr. Speaker, a very interesting bit of paper in the newspaper saying, who is Fred Smith, QC? Mr. Speaker, I'll read just a little bit of it. It is really very interesting, and then you will understand. Fred Smith, father Eddie, operated a mailboat between Nassau and Gonaive, Haiti, where he traded his goods with his daughter, Julia Richards, with his wife, Julia Richards,
Member for Fox.
Who was-
for Subdistrict. Just want to remind you that what you read, you accept as your own remark.
yes, sir,
Very
I
well.
accept it.
Very well.
Mr. Speaker, his mother was born in Jordan, the crystal capital in the Middle East. They had 4 children, Norma, Gladys, Joyce, and after a few years, Fred Smith, QC. The 4 children was born in Port-au-Prince, Haiti.
Smart after that, you stop.
The 4 children was born in Port-au-Prince, Haiti, and registered with the British Consul as citizens of Great Britain and her colonies. They became Bahamian citizens as all of us on July 10th, 1973. Although they lived in Haiti, they were frequent visitors to their home and family in Nassau. But at an early age, Fred knew what discrimination and roundup meant. He was 8 years old when his father was similarly put on a plane and deported to the Bahamas by the dictatorial Papa Doc and his evil Tonton Makut. I recall us living in terror, said Fred, whispering in the night, clustered around a candlelight, so that the housekeepers could not hear us. Frequent roadblocks during the day, our home being invaded and torn apart by the Tonton Makuts. My mother being seized and spirited away and disappearing in some prison where she could not be found in 3 days. He recalled his father hiding his mother and his sisters in the mountains, while he and his father were barricaded in the bedroom with all sorts of shotguns and hunting guns, while in the background they were tearing our house apart. Mr. Speaker, the traumatic ordeal this gentleman endured as a child was unfortunate. And Mr. Speaker, I empathize with him. But from the action he is now displaying, one can only conclude that the psychological counseling he required as a child to overcome this traumatic experience, he never got. Mr. Speaker, unless we are willing to forgive our past, we will always be a slave to it. Christiana Ine Volson said, and I quote, "As long as you experience fair pain of a memory or flashback, there is a lie attached that needs to be confronted." Mr. Speaker, holding on to past circumstances is like placing a lock on your soul. Maya Angelou said, "Hate has caused a lot of problems in the world, but it has not solved anything yet." This is the Bahamas, Mr. Speaker, not Haiti. Mr. Speaker, the same Bahamas who has done nothing but good for the QC. This is the land he chose to call home. He had an option to live in Jordan, where his mother is from, in Haiti, where he was born, and in the Bahamas, where his father was from. But he chose the Bahamas. Yet he is trying to destroy this land he chose to call home.
Wow.
The thought of that is baffling, Mr. Speaker. I say it is baffling. But, Mr. Speaker, that is the reality we have to live with. Mr. Speaker, I say to the Director William Pratt and our wonderful group of immigration officers, especially those in the enforcement unit, on behalf of the beautiful people of this country, thank you for what you are doing. Thank you for your service. Mr. Speaker, during my years as a trade unionist, I had the pleasure of meeting with the Minister of Public Service at the time, every month, the pleasure or displeasure. And every month, the group of trade unionists sat around the table with the minister, and I heard every month the prison officers giving the same concerns. And every month the minister turned to the permanent secretary and says, get the prison officers straight. Mr. Speaker, of course nothing happened. Mr. Speaker, I always wonder about that until I came into the political arena. And I see no matter how hard you ask a ministry to do some things, no matter what it is, unless it is more of their political side, Mr. Speaker, it don't happen. And Mr. Speaker, I was in the public service for 32 years. I've seen it over and over. I've seen it over and over, Mr. Speaker. And it is rearing its ugly head again. Mr. Speaker, ever since I came to the Immigration Department, I met promotion pending for the immigration officers. It was sent to the public service over and repeatedly, Mr. Speaker, and they are sending back excuses such as they need their birth certificate. Mr. Speaker, when you were employed by the government, you could not be employed unless your birth certificate was on your file. So why is it that they are holding the promotion for the immigration officers? Mr. Speaker, it is very vexing. And I am publicly advocating to persons responsible, please stop holding up the hard-working immigration officers' promotion. And send it through. They deserve it. Mr. Speaker, it's very vexing. Mr. Speaker, I turn my attention to VAT. And Mr. Speaker, the member for Southern Shores went through the story of Chicken Little, Mr. Speaker. The example of paranoia and mass hysteria. But Mr. Speaker, the moral to be drawn is served as a warning that unwarranted mass hysteria may lead to disillusion, anxiety, and impending doom. And Mr. Speaker, it is my belief that all the fear-mongering eluded from the members opposite and some on our side over VAT will equate them to the little chicken. And Mr. Speaker, I didn't say the word chicken. I said that just how I say it. And I mean it just like that. Like a little chicken.
And biddies.
Biddies. Mr. Speaker, the members opposite will have Bahamians believe that the world is coming to an end with the implementation of value-added tax. But the Bahamas is not the only country in the world on VAT. Mr. Speaker, this is a 25-page document with 124 countries that implement VAT.
Yep.
And Mr. Speaker, these countries, including Canada, Australia, Argentina, Barbados, Belgium, Dominican Republic, France, New Zealand, and many others, Speaker, have multiple taxing systems. Not only VAT, they have VAT, income tax, yep. They have all different type of tax, Mr. Speaker. Corporate tax, but these are people who want to see their country survive. Mr. Speaker, for the edification of those who claim to follow the teaching and example of Jesus Christ, I turn their attention to Matthew 17:24 to 27, the New International Standard Bible. And I quote, Jesus and his disciples arrived in Capernaum. The tax collectors came to Peter and asked, "Does your teacher pay tax?" "Yes, he does," Peter replied. When Peter got to the house, Jesus told him, "So that we may not cause offense." Another version put it this way, "So that we may not break the law. Go to the lake and throw out your line. Take the first fish you catch. Open its mouth. You will find a coin. Take it and give it to them for me and for you." Mr. Speaker, Jesus not only saw the rationale in paying his tax, but he willingly participated because he knew it was the right thing to do. And to reiterate and confirm his position in Matthew 22, it records that when the Pharisees asked Jesus if it was right to pay imperial tax to Caesar or not, he asked them to show him a coin and asked, "Whose image and inscription is this?"
Preach, Clay, preach.
They answered, "Caesar's."
Yep.
Jesus said, "Then render to Caesar that which is Caesar's,
Yes.
and unto God that which is God's." Mr. Speaker, what I find so amazing is the fact that there are good, sound, biblical principles
Admonition, yes.
that applies to every facet of human existence. I know it is hard right now, Mr. Speaker. But Jesus, who taught us by example, is able to sustain us in these hard times. Mr. Speaker, I said over and repeatedly in this honorable chamber, and I will continue to advocate until it resonates in the psyche of my government, that something needs to be done. And we need national service in this country. Mr. Speaker, Sir Lyndon said in his address on November 4th, 1994, and I quote, "I firmly believe that national service is the key to solving their manhood problem," talking about our young men. "That national service is the key to solving our crime problem. That national service will eventually solve unemployment problem. The new national service of which I speak is a program of human development, a program in continuing education. Consequently, it must contain educational programs, vocational programs to teach and develop skills of economic importance. And it must also contain character-building programs that teach manhood, responsibility, and caring. This national service will provide young people with the opportunity and the means to obtain the recognition and earn the respect they want. And Mr. Speaker, if you watch our young men today, they go around and they shoot because they say, "I was disrespected." But if this national service was in place, Sir Lyndon predict that they will earn the respect they want. He went on to say, "Our stated concerns and our determination to do something about crime would be insincere and meaningless if what we do is demonstrated only by what we are prepared to do to young people and not by what we prepared to do for our young people." End quote. Mr. Speaker, Sir Lyndon is right. even from the grave, Mr. Speaker,
Yep.
he is right.
Yep.
We need something for our young men and our young women to do, to keep them occupied, to keep them off the streets. Mr. Speaker, you drive very early in the morning in our streets. I will go jogging and I will drive around in the streets, Mr. Speaker, and our young men are already in the streets sitting down under the tree. Mr. Speaker, my mother always say, the devil find work for idle hands.
Yep.
Mr. Speaker, can you imagine what this country would look like with a nation of disciplined, educated, responsible young men and women with a vocation? Could you imagine what this country would be like if national service was implemented 21 years ago? So Lyndon had a vision.
Yeah, when he brought it in.
Biblical principle teaches, where there is no vision, the people perish. Mr. Speaker, I turn my attention to national insurance. Mr. Speaker, on the 11th of this month, while coming to this honorable place, I could not help but notice a lady with a nasal cannula receiving oxygen. She beckoned to me and I went over to see her. And I was given an envelope without an address. As I took it, I concluded in my mind that most of us would be receiving one of these envelopes. I then observed the same kind of envelope in the hands of some of the other members as they walked in. Mr. Speaker, I opened that envelope and it read, "Dear sir, madam, my name is," I will keep the name, "I have worked at the House of Assembly for many years before recently being redeployed. I need to urgently undergo surgery for a lung transplant. I have to be relocated to the USA to have this procedure. Therefore, I am in need of immediate medical assistance, however possible, in order to make this happen. Any assistance in supporting me financially for this endeavor would be greatly appreciated." She went on to give a number at Scotiabank, and she gave a number where she can be reached. Mr. Speaker, although each person might have individual experiences, I am sure this letter expresses the sentiments of many Bahamians needing medical financial assistance. And Mr. Speaker, I cannot for the life of me hear any member of Parliament, any person who says, go to people's door and knock and say, "I will represent you." I cannot for the life of me hear a member of Parliament saying, "We do not need national health insurance." Mr. Speaker, I speak boldly for South Beach constituency. We cannot wait for national health insurance to come through. Mr. Speaker, see, I work in the health care. Mr. Speaker, and I work in the private area, Mr. Speaker. I worked in the public area. So I have good experience of what happens, Mr. Speaker. Yes, if the member for Kalani was here, he will tell you. When you are a private patient, your private doctor, which is also employed by the government, comes in, do the surgery of his private patient, then leave and go to his private office, and the government patient, the patient who don't have insurance or who cannot pay, stays on the ward. Mr. Speaker, I know. I work there. I complain about it a lot as a trade unionist because I thought it was wrong. So those of us who have in our minds that we don't need national health insurance so that our people, Mr. Speaker, can be covered like those ones who get the preferential treatment because they have money and insurance, Mr. Speaker. No, no, something is wrong. Something got to be wrong with that picture, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I asked the member for East Grand Bahama because he was so adamant that we don't need it. I asked him if he got one of these letters and read it. I asked him if he read one of these, Mr. Speaker. Because there ain't no way you can read something like that and turn your back. No way, Mr. Speaker. You were sent here to represent your people. Mr. Speaker, the FNM managed to convince the people during the last convention, the last election in 2007, that national health insurance was not good for them. But today, numerous Bahamians cannot afford to pay medical bills. Not only did they convince the people, they stopped, reviewed, and canceled its implementation. Then introduced a watered-down version dubbed prescription drug program. A program that they knew could not assist with hospitalization, could not assist with doctor's fee, could not assist with surgical procedures, lab tests, ultrasound scan, CAT scans, and all the other medical procedures, Mr. Speaker. And the member for Kalani should know better. He sits at the cabinet table as a minister of health. The member for Long Island and the member for Central Grand Bahama sat around that same table, Mr. Speaker. And I can't see how they can go to their people and know they are sick and know they cannot get finances and say no to national health insurance. So our people are right back where they started. Cookouts and letter for financial assistance. Mr. Speaker, when I was ratified as a candidate for this great PLP, I remember sitting in a forum discussing individual goals. With much passion, I articulated my vision as long-term plan for this nation. To my disappointment, one of the leading members of the group said that I was advocating communism, and that baby was laid to rest. So, Mr. Speaker, I am naturally elated that this government is putting together a national development plan, long-term plan, Mr. Speaker, focusing on the development of individual islands so that the descendants of these islands can relocate to their homes and live comfortable, free from crime and every other thing, Mr. Speaker, with sustainable employment. It is commendable that this government is getting valuable input from our young people, Mr. Speaker. Our young people are some of the most intelligent people in the world because, like it or not, Mr. Speaker, they are our future. This is what our young people are looking for. They want to know where their country is going to be in the next 10, 20, or 30 years. Mr. Speaker, my only concern is incrementalism, Mr. Speaker. Our history has been a constant pattern of 5-year plans where one fellow tried to implement a plan that is good for the country. He says it's good for the country, and consequently he loses his government, and the other fellow stops the plan, review and cancel. What this is doing with the country, Mr. Speaker, is putting the country 1 step forward, 2 steps backwards. We don't need that, Mr. Speaker. This is 2015. We don't need to be going backward and forward. We need to be going as our coat of arms says. We need to be going forward and upward and onward Mr. Speaker, so the long-term plan that this government see to put in place, Mr. Speaker. I commend him for his insight. I commend him, Mr. Speaker, for putting in a good plan for this beautiful archipelago we call home. Mr. Speaker, I must again commend member for Centerville, Mr. Speaker, for his insight in causing the liberalization of cellular phones, Mr. Speaker. This will mean competition, Mr. Speaker. Competition in cost, competition in service, and with competition comes accountability and low cost for the consumer, Mr. Speaker, and I can't wait. Mr. Speaker, I was in Freeport last Friday. I'm yet to get a call. You could not get email service. Couldn't get anything, Mr. Speaker. So I am so glad that competition is finally coming to the Bahamas for the cellular phones. Mr. Speaker, I listened to the member for Long Island talking about BTC and how the government had failed to get the 2% and all of that. Mr. Speaker, who can forget how so cunningly, the F&M negotiated BTC. Solid then came to Parliament the following morning bragging, Mr. Speaker, about how the deal is done. So no matter what you do, the deal is done. Mr. Speaker, we saw it, Mr. Speaker. You saw it just like how the Bahamian public seeing me now, we saw him. And he said the deal is done. Nothing you could do about it. Nothing. And Mr. Speaker, I was out there, Mr. Speaker, when they let the dogs on us, Mr. Speaker, fighting for it.
Go to Africa.
Mr. Speaker, that reminds me of apartheid if nothing else did. And I thought, where did she get the unmitigated gall to even get up in this place mentioning BTC? But that is typical of the F&M, Mr. Speaker. No shame, none. They have sold away the birthright of the Bahamian people. Then getting up asking this government why you didn't negotiate the 2% the way we wanted it. Mr. Speaker, I say to you again, the devil is a liar.
Yeah.
Mr. Speaker, unemployment remains a vexing problem in this country. I don't have to tell you, Mr. Speaker, because I am sure you go to your constituency office and you hear and you see and you perceive the devastating effect unemployment have on our families. Relationship it has on a social structure. And Mr. Speaker, unemployment is the #1 cry in this country today. I have said it before and I will say it again. No matter how much we do to make the economy better, the average person who do not understand GDP, down or upgrading, they have no interest in the IDB and IMF or any international obligations. The only thing they are interested in, Mr. Speaker, is that I do not have a job. I cannot feed my children. They are taking my house. They are turning off my light. And Mr. Speaker, while I'm on this light thing right now, Mr. Speaker, I want to say to the good chairman here right next to me, at some point in time, Mr. Speaker, I am sure a directive was given not to turn off the people's light on a Friday evening. But this is starting all over again, Mr. Speaker. They should not turn off the people's light on a Friday evening.
No.
Mr. Speaker, if you turn it off on Friday evening, when would the people have time to go and try find money and pay their light bill? Why should they suffer over the weekend? I think that is cruel, Mr. Speaker.
You're allowed to live.
Mr. Speaker,
That's done.
if the people are not feeling that the economy is better in their pockets, then to them, we are not doing anything. That is the bottom line, Mr. Speaker. The people need relief, not tomorrow, but now.
Yeah.
And we are elected to do just that. Mr. Speaker, I have faith that God, and while we appreciate Bahama and other foreign direct investment, I have faith that God will revive this country again. But it comes with condition. And that condition he gave us is, if my people, which are called by my name, shall humble themselves. Humble themselves. Humble themselves. We are a proud people, Mr. Speaker. He said, humble yourself and pray and turn from your wicked ways. Then will I hear from heaven. Then and only then. And I will forgive your sins. And I will heal your land. Mr. Speaker, may God bless you. And may God bless the Commonwealth of the Bahamas.